Hello dear followers, my name is Qodirova. I teach English at Faculty of the English Language and from the Department of English Linguistics. Today, in this presentation, I am going to present you the methods for foreign language teaching. First of all, before starting our presentation, let's analyze the term what is a method. So, all methods include prescriptions for the teachers and learners. All methods are prepackaged set of specifications of how the teacher should teach and how the learner should learn, derived from a particular theory of language and theory of language learning. Method is a tool in which the teachers can clearly know how to organize their lesson. For the teacher, methods prescribe what materials and activities should be used, how they should be used, and what the role of the teacher should be during the lesson. For learners, methods prescribe what approach to learning the learner should take and what roles the learner should adopt in the classroom. Defining a clear method during the lesson is very important, and combining several methods in a one classroom it's very important. And there are several types of the methods that each teacher can adopt during the lesson. They are grammar translation method. In other words, we can call them GTM. The next method is direct method. And we also have audiolingual method. Another method is total physical response, which is called TPR. And also we have the method which is called silent wave. And all these methods have their own features and they are very different from each other. The first method is grammar translation method. You know that grammar translation method was very effective in the last century, and most of the language classrooms were based on the grammar translation method. As its name says, grammar translation method is mainly based on the teaching grammar and vocabulary. Traditional way of teaching, and it's also called like this name, it is derived from Latin and Greek teaching ways of language teaching, and in the 19th century used to teach French, German, and English. This teaching method has a great history, and there are some typical features that grammar translation method holds. The first of all is presentation of the grammatical rule. Grammatical rules are very important in the grammar translation method. And next is specially written text that demonstrate the rule. It means that writing skill is also important in grammar translation method. The next feature of this method is the list of the new words. That method, GTM, is especially pays great attention to the reading, writing skill, and to increasing vocabulary skill as well. And it's also important translation in this method. Translation exercises. Grammar exercise plays important role in this method, and the teacher who mainly teaches based on the grammar translation method usually consider their lesson by integrating reading and writing lessons and focusing on the translation and learning new vocabulary. And emphasis on learning to read and write vocabulary is taught in the form of lists of isolated words. Also, in the grammar translation method, long, elaborate explanations of the intricacies of grammar are given. Grammar rules are explained by the teachers, and the teacher is the main role in the classroom. Medium of instruction was the mother tongue, and the teacher explains the grammar rules in the mother tongue, and the target language is little used in this lesson. No provision for the oral use of the language. Speaking and the listening skills are not important in grammar translation methods, and therefore they give a little attention. Little attention is paid to the content of the text, which are treated as exercises in the grammatical analysis. Often, the only drills are exercises translating disconnected sentences from the target language into their mother tongue. There are some main principles which is included in the grammar translation lessons. So the first question is, what is the goals of the teachers who use the grammar translation methods? According to the teachers who use the grammar translation method, a fundamental purpose of learning a language is to be able to read literature written in the target language. To do this, student needs to learn about grammar rules and vocabulary of the target language. In addition, it's believed that studying another language provides students with good mental exercise, which helps develop their minds. And also, the next question is, what is the role of the teacher? What is the role of the student in the grammar translation lesson? The roles are very traditional in this lesson. The teacher is the authority in the classroom as he or she explains the rules, grammar rules, to the learners. And the students do as she says so they can learn what she knows. Students do what their teacher says. Next, what are some characteristics of the teaching and learning process? Students are taught to translate from one language into another. Often what they translate are readings in the target language about some aspects of the culture of the target language community. So after the explanation of the grammar rules, students usually translate the text and find the new vocabularies. Students study grammar deductively, that is, they are given the grammar rules and examples, are told to memorize them, and then are asked to apply the rules to do the examples. They also learn grammatical paradigm, such as verb conjugations. They memorize native language equivalents for target language vocabulary words. And another thing is about the techniques which is related to the grammar translation method. The first exercise, the first technique related to this method is fill in the blanks exercise. This is a very common exercise in the GTM classroom. In this exercise, students are given a series of sentences with words missing. They fill the blanks with new vocabulary items or with items of a particular grammar type, such as prepositions or verbs with different tenses. Another technique which is mainly used in the grammar translation method is memorization. Students are given a list of target language vocabulary words and their native language equivalents and are asked to memorize them. Students are also required to memorize grammatical rules and grammatical paradigms, such as verb conjugations. And the next method is the direct method. Direct method is also very famous in the language teaching classroom. It is emerged after the GTM. Direct methods are posited by the Charles Berlitz, and it is used in the second language teaching. And second language learning is similar to the first language learning. And there is some features that the direct methods emphasize on. First of all, the direct methods mainly emphasize on the oral interaction. Unlike the grammar translation method, it is mainly deals with the speaking, listening skill, and it also pays important attention to the spontaneous use of the language. And no translation is required during the direct method classroom. And also, little if any analysis of grammatical rules and structures. Grammatical rules usually is not explained by the teachers, and the students usually learn the grammatical rules in the context. And there are some features of the direct method. The first is classroom instruction was conducted in the target language, and mother language is little used here. There was an inductive approach to grammar, and the students learned the grammar rules in the context in the dialects, for example. Only everyday vocabulary was taught by this method. Concrete vocabulary was taught through pictures and objects. Teachers mainly use visual aids to memorize new vocabulary. Abstract vocabulary was taught by association of ideas. New teaching points were introduced orally. Communication skills were organized around question-answer exchange between teacher and students. And speech and listening comprehensions were taught in this method. And another feature of the direct method is concrete pronunciation and grammar were emphasized. And there are some principles of the direct methods. First of all, what are the goals of the teachers using direct methods? Teachers who use a direct method intend the students learn how to communicate in the target language. Rather than just focusing on the grammar and vocabulary, direct method aims to increase the communication skills of the learners. That's why it's mainly emphasized on the teaching, speaking, and the listening skill, and the vocabulary is taught on the context. In order to do this successfully, students should learn to think in the target language. What is the role of the teacher? What is the role of the students in this method? Also, the teacher directs the class activities. The student's role is less passive than in grammar translation lesson. The teacher and the students are more like partners in the teaching and learning process. There are some special techniques which is used in the direct method. The first is reading aloud. Students take turns reading sections of a passage, play, or a dialogue out loud. At the end of each student's turn, the teacher uses gestures, pictures, realia, examples, or other means to make the meaning of the section clear. The next technique is question and answer exercise. This exercise is conducted only in the target language. Students are asked questions and answered in the full sentences, so that they practice new words and grammatical structures. They have the opportunity to ask questions as well as answer them. And another technique of this method is getting students to self-correct, and it's one of the most important techniques of the direct method. First of all, there are several types of the self-correction. The first is the teacher of the class has the student self-correct by asking them to make a choice between what they said and alternative answer is applied. There are, however, other ways of getting students to repeat what a student has just said, using a questioning voice to signal to students that something was wrong with it. Another possibility is for teacher to repeat what the student said, stopping just before the error. The student then knows that the next word has gone. And the next technique is fill in the blanks exercise. This technique has already been discussed in the grammar translation method, but it differs in its application in the direct method. All the items are in the target language. Furthermore, no explicit grammar rule would be applied. The students would have included the grammar rule they need to fill in the blanks from examples and practice in this earlier part of the lesson. The next method is audiolingual methods. Audiolingual method is very famous among the language teachers, and it outbreak after the World War II. It's hastened the need to become orally proficient. It's also called the army method, an oral-based approach to language learning. It is influenced by structuralism and behaviorism, as it identifies the grammatical structures and the basic sentence patterns, and the audiolingual method practices these patterns by systematic attention to pronunciation and intensive oral drilling. By its name, we can guess that audiolingual method mainly gives attention to develop listening skill and pronunciation comprehensions. There is little or no grammatical explanation in this method. Grammar is taught inductively. Great importance is attached to pronunciation, very little use of the mother tongue by teachers is permitted. Successful responses are reinforced, and there is a great effort to get students to produce error-free utterance in this method. Moreover, the audiolingual methods, here the new material is presented in the form of the dialogue. There is dependency on memorization of the set phrases and overlearning. By contrast, repetition the learners develop habits. Language learning is seen as acquiring a set of appropriate mechanical habits. Errors are not accepted because they lead to the development of bad habits. The role of the teacher is to develop good language habits in this type of the method. And there are some main principles in audiolingual method. So first of all, what are the goals of the teachers who use the audiolingual method? Teachers want their students to be able to use the target language communicatively. In order to do this, they believe students need to overlearn the target language, to learn to use it automatically without stopping to think. Their students achieve this by forming new habits in the target language and overcoming the old habits of their native language. Audiolingual methods restricts to use the mother tongue. Instead, it is give focus on the using the target language and developing thinking skill in the target language. And there are some typical exercises which belong to audiolingual method. The first activity is the dialect memorization. It's very helpful for the learners to memorize the information that they are giving. First is repetition drill. In this part, students repeat the teacher's model as accurately and as quickly as possible to learn the lines of the dialogue. In the stage of the transformation drill, the teacher gives students a certain kind of sentence patterns. Students are asked to transform a sentence into a negative sentence. While in the stage of the question and answer drill, this drill gives students practice with answering questions. And the next activity is complete the dialogue. Selected words are erased from a dialogue, and students complete the dialogue by filling the blanks with the missing words. In this example, you can see the dialogue, and some words are missing, and the teacher makes students to complete the dialogues by filling the blanks with the missing words. The next method is the silent way. And this method is characterized by a problem-solving approach. It develops independence and autonomy and also encourages students to cooperate with each other. Learning is facilitated if the learner discovers or creates rather than remembers and repeats what is to be learned. Learning is facilitated by accompanying or meditating physical objects. Learning is facilitated by problem-solving the material to be learned. And there are some spatial typical techniques belong to this method. The first one is sound color chart. The teacher refers students to a color-coded wall chart depicting individual sounds in the target language. Students use this to point out and build words with correct pronunciation. The next is the teacher's silence. Teachers is generally silent, only giving help when it's absolutely necessary. The next technique is peer correction. Students encourage you to help each other in a cooperative and non-competitive spirit. Self-correction gestures is the next technique. Here the teacher uses hands to indicate that something is incorrect or needs changing. For example, using fingers as words and touching the finger, word that is in need of correction. The next technique is word chart. Words are depicted on charts. The sounds in each word corresponding in color to the sound color chart described above Students use these to build sentences. Was the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. See you for the next presentation.